All right, hello again, everyone. Welcome back. It's Willpop Vinyl, and I just got back from Japan with about 30 records. I hit somewhere around 20 shops across Tokyo, Osaka, and Kyoto to do it. Before I start showing you what I actually pulled, I wanted to give you a little bit of the findings that I learned on this trip. Let's just call it a list. The 5 biggest things I learned digging for vinyl in Japan this time around. Um, Hopefully, a lot of this will save you time, get you excited to go explore the country and the record stores in particular. And yeah, let's just get right into it. Before I do the actual 5 things, let me just give you some context about this trip for me. This was a family trip. This was not a solo digging excursion. So, we went with my wife, my 4-year-old kid, and my uncle who's in his 60s who has never been to Asia. So a lot of this trip was structured around visiting museums, temples, hitting up, restaurants for eating on a family schedule, letting my wife do the things that she wants to do, letting the kid do things like go to the playground. So this was not a dedicated trip. So, and the constraints that I was under inform a lot of this list. So if you're going on a solo trip, which I hopefully you will someday, or hopefully you are if you're watching this, some of this stuff might not be as applicable for you, but this is my list. So, all right, here are my 5 big takeaways. The first should be no surprise based on the context I just set up. Time management was a huge factor for me on this trip. Between all of the touristy stuff that we were doing, the necessity to sleep, the necessity to eat, I did not get to hit up as nearly as many stores as I wanted to. I had a Google map filled with pins of all the various neighborhoods across those 3 cities, plus a city that we didn't even get to go to, Kobe. 20 sounds like a lot of shops to visit, but keep in mind I was there for like 10, 12 days, and there's over 100 stores in Tokyo alone. So this trip really became a fact-finding mission for me because, my wife is Japanese, my daughter's Japanese. We're going to be going back a lot moving forward. So yeah, just the nature of this trip, I was forced to do 2, 3, 4 stores sometimes in 60 to 90 minutes, flipping through the bins as fast as I could, trying to find stuff. And as a consequence of that, I didn't really get to film anything. I had an intention to kind of turn this into more of a travel log type of series and experiment with learning to edit and recording that stuff, but I barely had time to do the shopping that I wanted to do. So hopefully on a future trip, I'll get to do that. All this to say, plan ruthlessly and use your time wisely. And that's going to dovetail into the next thing that came up for me. Inspecting records in Japan was a lot harder than I anticipated. In the US, I'm very used to being able to very easily just like tip the record out of the jacket, or just and compare it against Discogs and stuff like that. But in Japan, everything is placed in these sealable outer sleeves, which are great for maintaining the record, right? Keeping dust off of it and keeping it clean, and probably helps just with the overall condition, tightly packed in those bins. But it's really terrible for inspecting. I could barely ever find time to actually pull the discs out and take a look at them, let alone cross-reference them against Discogs. Also keep in mind, traveling abroad, your 5G or whatever connectivity you have is probably going to be a bit slower than you might be used to domestically. And, on top of that, like, the stores are very small. So finding space to actually like put your stack down, wrestle with the sleeve, take it out, try to keep the sticky parts in the sleeve from touching the record or the jacket or the OB and getting tangled up, and then like cramming it all back in. The store employees are really good at this. I'm not. So it became a really painful moment for me early in the trip, trying to realize like I can't shop the way I would normally in the US just because of the way they package these records. Now, the upside is, and this is kind of point 3, and I was anticipating it, the yen is historically weak against the US, and prices are overall really, really good when you're over there. Being from the US, the yen is at like a 30 or 40-year low against the dollar. The mental math that I was running during the trip eventually was to realize that 1,000 yen is about $6. So, I think you see a big round number like 3,000, 4,000 yen and you kind of just want to drop 2 zeros and go like that's 30 or 40 bucks, but that's not true. That's 18 bucks or 24 bucks. It actually, like, even 5,000 yen is a $30 record. $30 is the price of a brand new record in a lot of cases, or even less in the US, like a modern repress. So digging through, you'll see a lot of these numbers like 2,500, 3,000. Have a good mental math like strategy going in, understand your conversion rate, know what you've got, and then kind of combining the difficulty of inspecting the records with the relative affordability of them. I just modified my shopping approach to be much more vibes based, right? Does it have an OB strip? Is there any information on like the card that an employee might have written that'll help me understand more about the record? How's the price look? Okay, it's $18, it's $24. I'm just going to get it because I'll look at it later, and if it's not exactly what I want, taking it back home, I'll probably be able to sell it on Discogs and hopefully break even at the least. Sometimes these Japanese records can be worth a lot more domestically because people don't want to pay the shipping from Japan. So that was the approach I ended up taking. Number 4, the thing that really surprised me, and this is something that I came to yesterday, the first day back from the trip, where I actually got to like diligently unpack everything and really look at everything for the first time, is how good the condition is of Japanese records. Obviously, like, researching for this trip, I had seen a lot of people mentioning how well cared for Japanese records are, and that's it's one thing to hear it, it's another thing to actually go and see it. Opening these things up, oftentimes the jackets had super strong corners. Old records, 40, 50 years old, sometimes you'd see a little bit of staining, some spots, maybe a little like mold. They get old, that happens. But the discs themselves are all VG plus or better. I mean, most of them would be easily graded as near mint, I believe, without plate grading them, obviously. And I wasn't, again, being picky, right? I'm buying most of these things blind just based on the outside because I'm moving fast. I can't really open them up to inspect. So yeah, I mean, you're finding 30, 40, 50-year-old records that really look new-ish, as new as they can. It's really spectacular how well these things have been preserved over there. And perhaps it is because of this annoying sleeve that everyone seems to be using. I don't know. But yeah, that's just was a great bonus. So the last thing I'll talk about in strategy here is that in a way my research paid off, but in a way it also inhibited me, because finding what I wanted ended up being a lot harder than I expected. And we'll talk about this more in subsequent videos where I actually show you what I bought and talk a little bit more about the shopping experience at individual stores. But it turns out, like, despite the fact that jazz is really popular, at least at the stores I went to, Japanese jazz was not very prevalent in the bins. You might find some stuff, but I had a really hard time finding some of the things that I had really built a lot of my research around. And, also like things like ambient music, which I'm super into. So many of the stores are very focused on prog, psych, American music, American jazz. That dominates, and I have to assume that that's some combination of what travelers want, right? I mean, that's also the case for a lot of shops in the US. Like, you go in, you're going to see Beatles, you're going to see Rolling Stones, right? You're going to see that stuff. But it's even more saturated here, I would say, and it's often a mix of US pressings or British pressings with Japanese pressings. They don't always do a good job breaking those things out. So for me, when I'm like in Japan, I want to find Japanese pressings, I want to of US stuff, or I want to find Japanese jazz. It ended up being a little bit harder than I anticipated. Not to say I didn't find anything. So, looking ahead to the videos, I did find some great stuff, but it was a bit more far between than I thought. But I still walked away with a ton of stuff I wanted. So yeah, stay tuned for the next video. And that's it. Those are my 5 big takeaways for the sake of having a list. This is consider this an amuse-bouche for the main course, which will be the next 2 videos or so, talking about the actual shopping I did and what I picked up. There's a couple places where I had mega hauls, so hopefully you're going to enjoy seeing the stacks that I got. And you can just imagine my experience, holding big bags on the Japanese subway, trying to get back to the hotel safely with those things. If you enjoyed this, please go ahead, subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. Have you been to Japan? Have you done record shopping? Do you want to go? Yeah, please let me know. That's it. See you all in the next one. Bye.